Good evening. I would like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order on Tuesday evening, January 19th, 2021. This meeting is being held remotely as an alternate means of public access pursuant to an order issued by the Governor of Massachusetts dated March 12th, 2020, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. You are hereby advised that this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the Town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. At this time, may I please ask that if there is anyone who is recording this meeting, to please identify yourself by using the raised hand function or by unmuting your telephone and identifying yourself. Okay, seeing none. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. This evening, the Board of Selectmen will be, the majority of our meeting will be spent on important town business that is really the precursor to our annual town meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, we are going to continue our review of FY22 department budgets. We will then take a vote to submit Board of Selectmen sponsored warrant articles for consideration by the annual town meeting. Just a note for those who did not join us last week, as we go through each of these budgets this evening, the purpose of this evening is for each of our department heads and many of our citizen volunteers to make a budget presentation to the board. The board will ask questions. We will then open it up for questions and comments from members of the public. Tonight, the Board of Selectmen will not be taking any votes. We will not be making any budget recommendations. That's both consistent with the process that we use every year, but it's all the more important this year because in light of COVID-19, we don't have as direct a line of sight to our FY22 revenue picture as we typically would at this time in the year. So with that, we are going to hear a number of budgets, and we are going to start with the Bear Cove Park Committee, and I believe that's going to be. I'm just looking down the screen here. I believe Mr. Johnson, will you be walking us through the Bear Cove Park Committee presentation this evening? Mr. Johnson, if you could please unmute yourself.
There we go. Okay.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Good evening. I certainly will, Mr. Johnson. Welcome and thank you for taking the time this evening. Before starting, if you could, which is our requirement for everyone who's addressing the meeting, if you could please just identify yourself with your name and your address. We have your presentation up on the screen. So welcome and thank you for being here.
No problem. Good to be here. Rick Johnson at 6 Simmons Road.
Okay. And Mr. Johnson, can you see the presentation up on the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and you can just please let us know when you'd like the slides to be advanced.
Okay. I think Ted was going to actually present this, but I don't see him on yet, so I'd be happy to fill in. I think, as you all know, we have a 484-acre wildlife sanctuary and park that's used for public recreation back on the Back River. We're definitely dedicated to conserving the tranquility of the estuary and wetlands and fields and woods and animal and plant life. We have paved roadways and woodland trails and for public education. Our budget is, we're doing like a level budget, the same we've done, $28,424 again this year. So if you want to move to the next slide, that'd be great.
There's actually one slide for Bear Cove Park, so.
Oh, that's it?
All set.
Okay.
Well,
and,
I guess that's.
Yeah, and Mr. Johnson, we have, and also these pages are up on the website for members of the public. There is also a budget spreadsheet that that the committee has put together with the budget, and for my colleagues, that's located on page 9 in your budget books. Mr. Johnson, maybe you could just speak to kind of, you know, what's gone on in the park this year. Have you seen any changes in activity levels due to COVID? things that the committee sees on the horizon.
Yeah, I think from what I'm hearing, and being there over the summer, with the COVID, I think a lot more people have gotten out and enjoyed the park. They're out walking, and just making a little bit better use. So I think that's been a plus. As far as, one of the things we were working on, which is a totally separate thing, was getting community preservation funds for doing some repair work and other maintenance and things. And, we have the Green Dockhouse Museum that has been a focus for us to try to get that in a better condition so the public can use and enjoy it. But I mean, other than that, things have been pretty constant down there. We're just trying to take good care of it and keep it, for people to get out and use and enjoy.
And how is the dog, the on leash, off leash program? How's that working? This is, I think, maybe the third full year.
Right. Still getting good feedback. I think, we've always had some culprits that don't follow through, but I think for the most part, we're very pleased with how it's been progressing, and hopefully it will keep going that way.
Thank you. At this point, I'm going to invite my colleagues to ask any questions or make any comments, and we'll begin with Joe Fisher.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Joe.
Thanks for the presentation. I have just a few questions. You mentioned the repair work. Is that the R&M items in the budget that we see, R&M grounds and REM?
Yeah, I mean, the R&M grounds would be, repairing asphalt. We have, paved roadways and things we have to keep after. So that would fall in, fencing, just other odds and ends we do, plants that we've put in and some gardening work that's been done. So that's what that budget entails. The bigger one that kind of is a variable for us would be the equipment, because we have a lawnmower we've gotten it was a hand-me-down from the golf course, and the truck we got from the fire department. So depending upon how those things go, it's only two pieces of equipment. They're all fairly old, but we try to take good care of them, and that's where a lot of that money goes.
I did not see an item here on any security related expenses like park rangers or any other security tasks. Is that something that security, is that provided?
Oh, we have a part-time park ranger, so that should be in there.
That's just the salary.
Yeah, that's the one salary.
Okay,
that's
got it.
Scott McMillan. That's right.
Okay. And then clean up from trash or dogs. That's
what Scott does.
Okay.
Primarily, he'll do the plowing in the winter, maintaining the grounds, doing the mowing, and removing any trash and waste, and taking that over to the transfer station.
Okay, my final question is, I see a big $4 increase in the budget from last year to this year.
Oops.
So I won't ask you to justify the $4.
Okay, we'll try.
No, but thank you. This was an excellent presentation, and this is a resource that is highly valued by the town. So thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Bill Ramsey, questions or comments on the Bear Cove Park Committee budget?
Yeah, just a quick comment, Rick. Thanks for your presentation.
Sure.
With the pandemic, I think a lot of us have been outside more, and I've been walking a lot more in Bear Cove and Wampatuck, and I got to tell you, you guys do such a great job back there, and learning about the history of the park, was great for me and my family and my children learn about so much back there. And I wish he was on the call, but I cannot speak enough great things about what Scott McMillan does. And, I always see him back there. I've known him for years, and he does so much with so little back there. And it's a real gem for our community to have that park. And thanks for what you guys do on the committee.
Yep. Yeah, Scott's a great resource, a great guy. We're so fortunate to have him, and he really takes great care of the park, and he's really dedicated to the job. So we're lucky to have him.
Absolutely. And I would just to build on what both of my colleagues have spoken about. Joe, we saw the animal control budget last week, and Officer Badger is a very strong presence in Bear Cove Park, both because of the wildlife in the park and the number of dogs that that are walked in the park. Scott McMillan also, to the extent that it's needed, the Hingham Police Department provides additional support for the park. Rick, I know that, typically the committee organizes a lot of events, whether it's a road race, the Martin Richard Run, some of the others. And I know those were curtailed this past year because of COVID. And I think we're all looking forward to the time when those important activities can continue. I would just mention for members of the public that the Bear Cove Park Committee, we have 40 different committees within the town. The Bear Cove Park Committee is very much a working committee. Members of the committee are not only kind of setting policy, and we're going to talk about a CPC project in a few weeks to enhance the park, but also when there are things to be done around the park, this committee is very hands-on. And you have all just done a wonderful job. You are great custodians of this great resource, and we are just so grateful to Scott and to the entire committee for everything that you do. At this point, I'm just going to ask if there is anyone in the public who has a question or wishes to make a comment with respect to the Bear Cove Park Committee budget. Okay, seeing none, Rick, we thank you for jumping in. It sounds like maybe you pinch hitted. I don't know what the tense is there for one of your colleagues, but if another member of the committee joins the meeting and wishes to make any additional comments, we can do that. Actually, I think Mr. Matthews has just joined. Ted, good evening. We've just concluded. Rick has given us a walkthrough of the budget. He did a wonderful job. I don't mean to put you on the spot as soon as you join the meeting, but before we move on to our next budget, we'd certainly invite any comments that you have to make with respect to the park or the budget.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm just coming from a Hingham High School basketball game, and I didn't realize you'd get to us so early, but no, I think things in the park are good. We are, continuing to manage through this pandemic, and folks seem to be on good behavior. Other than that, I think that as far as budget goes, we can manage within it. Having missed Rick's comments. I think everything's in good shape. We were hoping to get some more road race revenue for the Friends of Bear Cove Park this year, but we'll see, I guess, at this point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So did the high school, did they win?
They did. The girls' junior varsity.
Excellent.
They did. Yeah.
Excellent.
Quite a year so far. So.
Thank you. Well, Ted, we, the board and the town, we so appreciate everything that the committee does. All of you as members, you set policy. You also are walking the park. You are working on the park. And it's just been an even more important resource during the pandemic. So on behalf of the town, please express our appreciation to everyone on the committee for all the great work that everybody does.
I will. Thank you. And you've got a great committee assembled. So I thank you as well.
Excellent. Our next budget is Elder Services, and we are joined by our Director of Elder Services, Jennifer Young. And Jennifer, I don't know if any members of the Council on Aging are joining, but if you have any of your board members with you and they're on the call, we'd appreciate your introducing them. And if not, we'll get right into your budget.
Can everybody hear me?
Now we
Yes,
can.
we can.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for that. Good evening, and thank you for having me. As mentioned, I am Jennifer Young, Director of Elder Services and the Senior Center. Our mission is to support the independence and ongoing personal development of Hingham's population 60 and older, to advocate for their needs and work to enhance the quality of their lives. We operate a full-time senior center providing a wide variety of programs to meet the needs and interests of older residents. We also connect seniors and family members to services and benefits to support independent living in our community. And as you can imagine, this year looks very, very different for our department. We can go to the next slide. Oh, here we are. The benchmarks and metrics. This year, we made calls to 913 seniors for wellness checks and to provide information on the expanding resources Hingham was able to and continues to offer. This information was also shared with 4,800 seniors through pre-recorded phone calls. We run 50 Zoom programs each month and provide limited wellness medical transportation. Our Meals on Wheels program never lapsed, and we expanded electronic communication using constant contact email campaigns and Facebook. Our key initiatives moving forward, we can go to the next slide, thank you. We continue to work to establish an online course registration and payment system accessible right from a smartphone or computer, in addition to our traditional mail and phone-in registrations. We hope to expand our virtual programs and our library of digitally recorded programs. Our department supports the public safety facility and the senior center renovation project. And with a partnership between our Council on Aging Board of Directors, the Senior Center Building Committee, and Hingham residents, discussions regarding rebranding the Senior Center should be formalized and explored. We want to integrate our existing roster of volunteers into remote opportunities. We know they want to stay engaged, and we're exploring ways for them to do so safely from home. And lastly, but certainly not least, as the state rolls out plans for COVID vaccinations, we will be ready to assist town administration, police, fire, and public health as the Department of Public Health guidelines allow. Now, the impacts of COVID-19 on elder services is immeasurable. We suspended all in-person programming in March. We implemented the use of the pre-recorded calls that I mentioned, allowing us to share information with 8,000 phone numbers. And with the help of other departments, 2,700 personal outreach calls were made. We expanded community partnerships and created cable public service announcements. In addition to our printed newsletter, we established electronic communications and a Facebook page. We implemented a large variety of remote programs and launched the Hingham Senior Center YouTube channel for our non-Zoomers. And while the Senior Center experience has changed dramatically, what we have been able to accomplish has opened up opportunities which we will take with us into future planning. And I'm so proud and thankful to the staff who went above and beyond to make sure our seniors had the resources they needed to stay home safely. And with our salary and expense requests, we will continue to do this good work through fiscal year 2022. Out of our request for a level service budget of $293,000, $268,000 are for salaries for our 3 full-time and 4 part-time staff. 2 part-time transportation positions are fully grant funded. Almost $25,000 of our expenses are for transportation costs. And we still rely on our volunteers to keep us running. I know it's been difficult for them, and I just want to say thank you to everybody for continuing to give their time to us. And thank you all for your time tonight. I'd like to ask if there are any questions.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm going to first ask Joe Fisher if he has any questions or comments about the Elder Services budget.
Jennifer, thank you. That was comprehensive. I really appreciate it. And this is an area of town government that I personally value a lot. So thank you for your dedication to this. So just as an overall question, I understand that there are no in-person programs, but is the senior center open right now?
We are not open to the public right now, no.
Okay. And there were 2 numbers that I'm not sure I understood. there was a number of 913 calls made this year, and then there was 2,700 outreach calls. What's the difference?
So the difference is that there were 913 individuals called, a total of 2,700 calls altogether. So initially, when the pandemic hit, we started outreach calls to our oldest elders and then moved forward. So we started with our 85 plus and then moved to our 75 plus and so on and so forth. So we repeated those phone calls for the oldest of our seniors.
So the 913 were individual calls and the others were sort of robocalls, or?
No, so out of the 913 calls, we called them 3 times.
Oh, I got it. 3 9s or 27. Yes, exactly. And how does that compare to prior years in terms of number of individual calls we've made?
It was never based on the immediate need of pushing information out to our seniors. So when we closed abruptly, we knew how fearful that could be for a lot of our more isolated seniors. So we really, and honestly, it was with the help of the accounting department, with the Selectmen's office, and with the library staff and volunteers, we're able to make all these phone calls so quickly to check in on these individuals. So I don't really have any historical data to compare to something like this. It was quite an amazing task.
Yep, no, I get it. I was just trying to understand from a benchmark standpoint, like each year we would typically make 100. Now this is 900 individual calls. I'm just trying to understand. It sounds like, given the circumstances, this is rather unique.
Absolutely. So, oh, I'm sorry. Any of those outreach calls that were done prior would have been resource based. If it was fuel assistance season coming up, so given an average year, I would say it was probably around 300.
Okay. Looking at this year's budget and last year's budget, last year there was a $27,000 item for motor vehicle, and this year it's 0. Is that because a motor vehicle was purchased?
I'm in the process of reviewing the purchase of that. It's our medical transportation vehicle.
But that was an item from fiscal year 21.
Correct. So that will be spent out by the close of this fiscal year.
And we're not anticipating any further expenses in that regard?
No. Okay,
because that's the bulk of the reasons, because we see, I see a drop in the bottom line of the budget, and it's exclusively really due to the motor vehicle purchase from last year. Let's see. To what extent are you, or is the Senior Center, doing what I would call interim work that needs to be done until we can do the substantial renovations that would occur after the public safety facility building is built and then the police department moves out? Are you engaged, or do you foresee in the upcoming budget work that needs to be done really just to keep the building going and repairing on an interim basis items that we really hope to avoid the big expense because we're going to be moving to a larger, doing a larger renovation?
Thank you for asking that, Joe. Actually, we do have some funds that were allocated for this current fiscal year for some minor modifications, including automated, curtains that will come down, allowing us to better use the space that we have. Some paint to make the building a little bit safer for people to walk through, so those with low vision can see the thresholds and changes in where the walls are. So those modifications should be starting towards the end of this month. And we're really happy to take the opportunity right now to make those changes. Great.
I mean, I just want to make sure that the urgency of getting the public safety facility building on track it's important, because it really has substantial implications for you. And if it turns out there's substantial delays, there may be additional budget items we need to add, if not this year, then in the future, to deal with the interim issues until we can get the larger renovation project going. Could you just briefly describe what your interactions have been and coordination has been with the library? Because I know the senior population often depends on the library for books, for communications, and it's an important resource. And I'm assuming that the two organizations, you and the library, work together. I'm just wondering if you could go into that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. I know Linda and her staff have done a fantastic job with getting resources out to the community and to the seniors in particular. We rely heavily on their tech support team when we're running a program to help get our non-tech savvy seniors to be able to connect to Zoom. They've been very patient and extremely helpful with supporting the programs that we do in that way.
Great. I mean, this is relevant because we will be reviewing later the library budget. So I was just looking for the coordination between you and them. That's it, really. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bill Ramsey, questions for Jennifer?
Jennifer, I was going to ask about the $27,000 purchase for the vehicle, but Joe beat me to it. So I know that the elder services have been hit hard with the pandemic, and you've done a great job pivoting and putting things online and making things virtual for our seniors. And your volunteers are unbelievable, 130 volunteers listed in your presentation, which is great. So thanks for all you do, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Jennifer, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, but before doing that, I just want to note for people that are viewing this meeting, if you look at the third bullet on Jennifer's presentation, she has quantified what it would cost in taxpayer dollars if we were to pay the many people who are so generous with their time in the senior center. And that's basically $280,734, which I just think speaks to the generosity of people in our community in terms of volunteering their time and their talent. But I would also say that this is a department that delivers a lot of value in the community. Jennifer, when we had the public safety, some of the joint meetings, the public information meetings, you spoke a little bit to the senior population. How big is the senior population in Hingham?
Well, I'm waiting for the new U.S. Census data to come out. The data that's 10 years old says that we have around 7,000 seniors. With the projected information from the UMass Donahue Institute, it puts that number closer to 9,000 seniors, and that's 60 plus. Yep,
and that's 7,000 in the last census out of about, I think, 23,000 people, so a fairly large percentage. Could you just, in general, speak to the clients who use the senior center? I mean, what types of, why do they come to the senior center? How do they engage? How does it help enhance our seniors' quality of life in Hingham, both in terms of programs and, some of the connections that happen?
Oh, Mary, thank you for asking that. And I will try to keep my answer short, but I could speak for a very long time about this. The center is it's a diamond for the community. We see seniors that have been coming in for years, to attend social programs to remain connected with their friends. But we also find a lot of newer, recently retired, recently widowed seniors coming in because of a life change. They're making a genuine effort to take an active role in their own aging process. So they might come in looking for a fitness program, but end up staying for social hours, learning how to play, a game with friends, taking an educational program. When we look at aging, there are so many factors that we really discuss. It's spiritual, it's emotional, it's social, it's physical. And we really try to provide programming to meet all of those factors, as well as to provide interesting programs to people in their 60s, as well as maybe even own their mother in her 80s or their own grandmother in her hundreds. So we really see a huge variety of seniors coming in, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity with the possible expansion so that we can provide a greater variety of programs at the same time.
Yeah, and Jennifer, relative to our, to our neighboring communities, for a senior population of Hingham's size, I think our current senior center is about 5,000 square feet. Is that right?
It's about 5,500.
Yeah, and given the population that we have, what should it be?
I would say, in order for us to provide the widest, broadest range of programs in the most effective way, I would look 15 plus, 15 to 20,000 would be ideal for the community this size. Yeah. And I know, you came from Plymouth, and that facility really is beautiful and has many of the things. Is there anyone in the public who has a question or wishes to make a comment with respect to the elder services budget? Okay, seeing none. Jennifer, I would just echo my colleagues' comments. COVID has touched us all in so many different ways. And for our senior population, some of our most vulnerable citizens, some of the loneliness and the challenges associated with just continuing to, engage in the community and to get groceries and get medicine and get to doctor's appointments, it's been more challenging, and the loss of connections is difficult as well. We appreciate you and your team, as well as the Council on Aging, working in so many creative ways to try to help people feel connected. And we're grateful to, all our town departments have stepped in when there's been a need. And I think it was in one of the early weeks of COVID, Tom called us all and let us know that, members of Linda Harper's team, members of the town hall staff, everybody was jumping in to make phone calls. And, when you hear things like that, it just speaks to the dedication of the team. And, if you could please extend our thanks and appreciation to them. And we will look forward to being able to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Senior Center in person, in the manner of celebration that a milestone like that deserves. So we will have that to look forward to later in the year. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks again for joining us, Jennifer.
Mary?
Yes, Joe.
If I could just interject, picking up on my colleague's comments before on the budget, perhaps as we go through, you might alternate calling on Bill first and then me second, and then back and forth, so I'm not preempting him all the time.
You got it. So Bill, you're going to be first with our next budget here, which is going to be the Bathing Beach Trustees budget. Right. And for those who are following, we have the materials uploaded online, and the Bathing Beach Trustees budget actually it is in the Culture and Recreation section of the online materials, close to the end. We are joined this evening. I see Ed Johnson. I see Chris Daly. I am not sure. I don't see Alan Peralt. Ed and Chris, I'm not sure which of you is going to walk us through this, but I'd invite either one of you to step in. And if you could start by giving your name and address for the record, that would be great.
Okay, I'll step in, Mary. Ed Johnson, 108 Ward Street.
Good evening. Ed, can you see the page that Michelle has up on the screen?
Yes, I can.
Great. Could you perhaps take a couple minutes and just walk us through
Sure.
Walk us through the materials?
Okay. Naturally, salaries take takes up the majority of the expenses in our budget. The salaries for the lifeguards, they work on 30-hour week. They're not 40-hour week employees. And there's on a rotating basis is 4 lifeguards. At times we have more on board in the weekends than we have during the week. We try to have a full complement on the weekends naturally. The weekends are the busiest time of the week for us, naturally. And during the week, we have less people at the beach naturally.
Mm-hmm. Ed, could you and Chris feel free to jump in as well, but you know that a big thing happened in September, which was the opening of the beach house. Could you kind of speak to how that's going, what you learned through operating it for the first, for September and October, how that's going to affect things going forward?
Right. The snack shop was excellent. We had many more people than we anticipated being at the end of summertime into the fall. And it worked very well. We have a lot more people coming down to the beach because of the work we did with the walkway and the snack shop. I anticipate if we get out of this pandemic, that we'll have a much crowded beach area down there than we ever had before. I don't know if Chris has any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'll just add that echoing Ed's comments, the opening of the beach house snack shop would be called nothing but a success in the environment that we're in. It went very well. The concessionaire reported that things went very well. They employed a lot of young kids in town also, which I think is an important thing. And I believe the plan is to open up in April to start again, assuming the parking lot's not full of snow, which I don't think it would be by that point. The only thing we did figure out this year is at the end of the season where it gets darker earlier, that parking lot is extremely dark. And we may have to think about some lighting for the future. That's not obviously in this budget discussion, but it's something that we did find out.
Thank you. Bill Ramsey, questions on the bathing beach budget for Chris or for Ed?
Yeah, so Chris and Ed, thank you guys for what you do. The snack shop was a wonderful addition to the bathing beach. And I also want to compliment you on the new signs down there that are discussing the history of the beach and the harbor. They're great, and I really enjoy it. And the brick walkway is wonderful too. So thank you for all of your efforts. It looks great. My only real questions are, looking at the budget, I saw an increase in water and electric. The water, it looks like it's for the outdoor shower. Is the electric because of the snack shop?
Yes.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks again. Thanks for all you do. We're lucky to have you as trustees.
Great. Thanks, Bill.
Joe?
Yes, really, thank you for this. So the budget increase, which is about 17% over last year, is, as Bill said, primarily the water and electric. At least with the electric, is that recoverable from our tenant who's leasing the snack shack?
So the tenant pays for his portion of the electric in the restaurant or snack operation.
Right.
He does not pay for the electricity for outdoor lighting and for the community room. So, and in the hallways, I believe. Ed, am I correct on that?
Yes, you're correct, Chris.
Yeah, I think they're separate bills, Joe, going to one of the concessionaire and one going to us.
Yeah. And I did not see anything in the budget with respect to the farmers market, either costs or revenue coming in. I know they have not been there, at least this year because of COVID. What are the plans, if any, with respect to having the farmers market back at the beach?
All we can say, Joe, is that we have not heard from the farmers market. We don't know if they want to come back or if they want to stay at Station Street. And we don't know what the town's preference is going forward. And of course, we don't know, if the pandemic is going to be over by the time they reopen. So the answer is we have no information, Joe.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
I had a question, and I'm not sure if this is for the trustees or Tom and Michelle, if this is for you, but to the extent that the community room is rented, the town receives that revenue, correct?
We're working on the details of that with John Coughlin now, Mary.
Okay, so that would come into another, that revenue would come in somewhere else in the budget. So while the utilities might be a little higher in this budget, the rental fees that are coming in in another part of the budget.
Well, and remember too, we get Chris and Ed may be able to better explain this, but we get a percentage of the total sales after a certain amount as well.
Yep. So Tom, do you know, does that come into local receipts or does that
it'll drop to the fund balance, Mary.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so Mary, there's an escalating structure with that percentage of revenue that we get. In these early years, it's not very much. Later years, as the concessionaire builds his business, and we want to empower him to do that, then we get more revenue. Now, as far as the community room, yes, we do want to be able to rent it out and gain revenue from that. And as we spoke at town meeting years ago, we ultimately would like this bathhouse operation to fund the beach operation, ultimately make it self-sustaining. That is the goal. And frankly, to pay back the money that was given to us by the town to reach that threshold to pay for the bathhouse after the initial grant from the state.
Yep, excellent. It looks like it's always been there, and I think there were a lot of concerns about sort of what it would look like, and hats off to the trustees. I would just echo my colleagues' comments. Over the last several years, it's really been a pleasure to see all the really positive changes going on in the bathing beach. I think it is a much more inviting place for people to go due to the efforts on the beach itself, with the seagrass, the fortifying that went on kind of underneath, the walkway, now the beach house. It's really becoming a destination, and that's been something that's been very important to many people in the town. And it's nice that there is public access to this great resource. Yeah. Is there anyone who has a question or wishes to make a comment about the trustees of the bathing beach budget?
Mary, if I could, I just would like to point out. Apparently, it's easy to see what Ms. Monsegure's favorite part of the new beach house is based on the photograph she took. Don't you think?
Had to test it out.
Yeah. I would also say, Chris and Ed, I think this next year, we're going to get a lot of learnings. We're going to find out how much electricity we're using. I know, and I see our Superintendent of Public Works, Randy Sylvester's, he's next up on the budget. I know that the popularity of the beach house and the COVID circumstances meant that his team was having to, empty trash containers more often. I really view this next summer as a summer of a lot of learnings, a lot of learnings about how this operates with other things. And, I think maybe come fall of this year, kind of before we go into the budget for the next year, it might be a good idea for just the trustees to come into a Board of Selectmen meeting and just talk to sort of what have we learned over this past summer. And what are the implications? Might it be that we're going to need to put in a capital outlay request for lighting, or just I think we owe it to ourselves to just capture and discuss any of those learnings as well as implications going forward.
It sounds like a good idea to me. Ed, does that work for you?
I agree. I would like to do that. And
Yeah.
I'm certain that it's going to be much more usage this summer if the pandemic is in check.
Yeah. Well, thank you again to both of you, and please extend our thanks as well to your other trustee. The next series of budgets we have are public works budgets. We're going to be looking at the public works budget, the budget for the landfill and recycling, and the sewer. And I'd like to introduce our Superintendent of Public Works, Randy Sylvester. Welcome, Randy. Thanks for being here. Good, good. I'll turn this over to you.
So I'll just start right away. The DPW has 6 divisions: engineering, fleet maintenance, highway, sewer, transfer station, and train park. Next slide. We have several benchmarks or metrics. We have 145 miles of road that the Public Works staff maintains, 100 miles of drain lines, 60 miles of sidewalks, 10,000 drainage structures, and maybe a little more than that, 10,000 plus public shade trees. And we plant on an average, well, under normal years, about 80 plantings of new trees a year. We did not do that this year due to COVID. We do about 380 removals and around 3,300 prunings a year. We have 80 pieces of snow removal equipment that go out on storms. There are 3,100 traffic and street signs that we take care of, and there's 5 sets of signal lights. The transfer station operates 4 days a week with an average of about 7,000 cars, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail later. About 7,000 plus vehicle visits per week. Next slide. So the key initiatives, we, on a yearly basis, we have our road reconstruction program and utility coordination, where we invite the utilities in and ask them what their plans are, and we tell them what our plans are so that we coordinate with any road building projects coming up. The MS4 stormwater permit compliance. This is an EPA mandated sets of rules and regulations that the town has to follow. We put in for DEP grants on a regular basis. We have public education about recycling regulations and changes, and I work with the recycling committee on that. Sewer inflow and infiltration program. That's pretty important to save money in the sewer system. Grounds maintenance of public facilities. We do all the grounds and maintenance, mowing lawns, maintaining trees and such, picking up the trash. We've integrated and are integrating the engineering functions into the DPW as we speak. And we're going to be doing a transfer station fee analysis, which is pretty close to being done. It is something that I think we should look at and the selectmen should look at, because I think we're underfunding ourselves on our fees. But we can get into that at another time. Next slide. So the COVID impacts to the DPW. So I mentioned average vehicle trips to the transfer station. That increased by about 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles per week.
Wow.
Excuse me?
Wow.
Yeah. So it's up around 9,000 vehicles per week. We have seen 10,000 at times. And it's starting to, well, it's taking a toll on the services. A transfer station swap shop, we closed that And the C&D is scale operations only, that we're not giving out any permits from the office to protect the staff and residents. As you mentioned earlier, Mary, there was an increase in trash pickup during the good weather to 7 days a week from 3 days a week, in particularly downtown and on the waterfront. So we're checking that daily, and we do have crews going down there on a regular basis during good weather, during the summer and spring, and fall for that matter, picking up the trash 7 days a week. We've noticed an increase in fuel usage due to our policy of using one person per vehicle, if possible. We've also seen a decrease in transfer station sticker revenue since we have not been able to give out any stickers, commercial or secondary stickers or otherwise. We're working on that transition right now and trying to go to an electronic process and then have them pick it up in the lobby, their sticker in the lobby. We also had a decrease in stormwater compliance, and that was in the form of mapping our system and outfall inspections, which I am now, I have hired an engineering team to come in and help with us, help us with that. Sorry. And to help us with doing the outfall inspections. So salaries and expenses, we have 51 full-time staff. We have two part-time transfer station staff. The DPW budget, that's a total of $4,191,414. $563,365 is for snow removal. $385,500 is for road maintenance. $284,000 is for paving supplies. The transfer station budget, that is going to be $1,655,017. That includes all of our expenses such as trash and salaries. Sewer, that totals out at $3,492,259. Also, that's all our expenses, costs due to the MWRA and the town of Hull, and salaries.
And Randy, that sewer budget is offset by the same amount of revenue. Is that correct?
That's so rate base.
Right. Yeah. So this is what we call it's very much like an enterprise fund, where all of the residents in town who are connected to the sewer, through their sewer bills, they fund all these operations. So if you're a taxpayer in Hingham and you don't have the sewer, you're not paying for a service you're not getting.
Correct.
Thank you.
Additional requests. I do have an additional request for 2 heavy equipment operators. Due to the extra usage and the services we provide. Right now, I am a little bit over budget in this year, FY21, due to the overtime that we've had to come in and deal with the trash situation, recycling, and anything else that we have to do. With the amount of time off, holidays and whatnot, it's very hard to have a full staff up there. And with the amount of cards in the services that we're providing, it's hard to keep track of everything. And we're having to come in more and more on our days off in order to keep up with the transfer station's needs.
And Randy, when people come in on their days off, are we paying them overtime?
We are paying them overtime, yes.
So that's like time and a half?
Yes, absolutely.
So given the level of activity at the transfer station, the more cost-effective way to support this increased activity is through hiring as opposed to overtime.
Absolutely. A lot of it has to do with getting rid of trash, and we're trailering our own trash down to CMAS. It's saved money overall, but now it's getting to the point that our tonnage is up from our average. It's up about almost 2,000 ton for this year, and that's what I budgeted at. And that equates to more trips going to CMAS, which then we have to bring in people to actually do that. So there's more trips going down to CMAS and to New England Recycling, get rid of the C&D and the trash.
Okay.
So, any questions?
Yeah, before I turn it over to Joe and Bill, I just want to point something out to people who are looking at the very detailed budget worksheets that Randy has prepared for all these budgets. Public Works is a capital intensive business. So one thing I would just remind people is that you will see capital outlay budget items in the current fiscal year, FY21. And for FY22, you'll see zeros. And that doesn't mean that we're not investing in capital in Public Works. It's just the Capital Outlay Committee is currently reviewing all the capital requests. So looking at all of your budgets year over year, Randy, if we exclude the capital, it looks like they're all pretty much kind of flat to this past year.
Yes, they are. Maybe even down a little bit.
Yeah, it looks like even some of them are down, and that again is some restructuring that was done within the town engineering department, and I know town engineer J.R. Fry is on. Last year, we thought that reorganization would allow us to increase our services, but also deliver them in a more cost-effective way, and it looks like that's happening. Joe, questions for Randy about his budgets?
Yes, thank you. And Randy, thank you. I mean, in my view, Public Works is one of the most underappreciated and taken for granted departments. I mean, it's not sexy to talk about fleet maintenance or the sewer or transfer station, but they're vital. So you deserve the recognition for making the town work. I wanted to pick up on a couple of points. The last one, the exchange you had with Mary in terms of getting additional permanent employees rather than dealing on an overtime basis because of the increased trips to CMAS and things like that. Are those increased trips, is that a long-term persistent trend, or is it just a short-term blip because of COVID? You know, you've mentioned that we have increased visits. I'm assuming it's because more people are staying at home, there's more trash, or people just want to get out of the house, so they're going someplace. But when COVID passes, are we likely to see that sustained increase that's justifying the increased number of employees that you're proposing?
Well, I would hope it would be going down, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, I think once things normalize, is that we won't get the amount of transfer station visits,
right,
or not get as much trash. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. I would assume that when things start to go normal, that's going to happen. The other thing is that recycling more and more is going to help all the numbers, not necessarily money-wise, because recycling is costing more and more until the markets until the markets are there where we can start getting something back for them. We only get back money for cardboard, and that fluctuates. And right now, it's not much at all. It's like $30 a ton. But the services that we're providing, and there are more and more services all the time, and that takes manpower to deal with each individual location. And that's from the recycling of electronics to books, from clothes, the swap shop, the yard waste area. We're taking in more and more as we go. And this has been, and we're recycling more and more. It's just that the manpower to do what is needed is not quite there yet. And the overtime, and this was even happening prior to COVID coming in March. That has been going up incrementally, and right now it's coming to a head.
Yep. So what I'm hearing is even post-COVID, there really is a need for the increased manpower.
There is.
Yep. Looking at the expenses, I see two items that really dropped. Your electric expenses dropping by over 8,000, vehicle fuel dropping by over 18,000. I'm glad for the savings, but why are we having those savings?
So that depends on the market. The actual fuel usage, it has decreased a little bit.
Yep.
And the electric usage is down incrementally, but that is the actual cost of the fuel that we get from the accounting department. So that number, I put in the fuel numbers and they figured out what it's going to cost. And that's the reason why those numbers are down.
Got it. Makes sense. At the transfer station, are you satisfied with how the COVID protocols are being implemented and observed by town residents?
Mostly, yes. I think everyone's done a very good job. Everyone seems to be wearing their masks every time I've been up there or looked. I've talked to the Board of Health about it, and they seem to think that we're doing a good job. I think overall we are doing a good job, and people are obeying and abiding by the rules and regs.
Yeah, I mean, because the Board of Selectmen, we have our COVID updates. We talk about, the importance of adhering to the COVID regulations, and we talk about the Board of Health. We really don't talk about you guys, and there's a direct impact there. So I just want to make sure that it's going as it should. Turning to snow removal, how are we on the budget in terms of, like, have we used the percentage of the budget that we expected to use at this point in time?
We did, and that's mainly from filling the salt shed, because we were down about half and we wanted to fill it before the season started. So that line has been pretty much depleted. But the contractor line, we're still not there yet. Hopefully the snow is minimal, but we're doing it. We're in pretty good shape as far as the snow budget goes at this point in time.
Because if you're not, I was going to volunteer Bill Ramsey to go out and assist you if you need any additional work.
You can use any help.
Yeah, exactly. Let me see where. One of the things when we went over, this was a few weeks ago, the new contract for the transfer station and the hauling costs. One of the things that we discussed at the time was to what extent, if there was more composting, that would result in cost savings for your department. And I think the answer was yes, it would, but not sure how to implement it, what the plans would be. And I'm wondering if you've given that any further thought.
So I have given it quite a bit of thought, and due to the way the transfer station is designed, it would be very difficult to get an actual composting site at the transfer station.
Yeah.
But what I've gone through and is the DEP does have a personalized composting program, and through grants and whatnot, I'm looking into buying compost bins, and we could sell them for a fee, a minimal fee, from the DPW, and people could come in and have composting at home. And a lot of towns do this, and a lot of towns have taken advantage of that program.
Yeah, because I know the Cleaner Greener folks are interested in trying to get that going, and so I guess they would just be working with you for the next steps with that.
Yeah, I was looking to. I made contact today with the DP. I'm waiting for an email back, but I was trying to get it going on either Earth Week or Arbor Day.
Oh, that's
to
great.
Start the program if I can.
Yep.
And I'm looking into that right now.
Thank you, really, and thank you for your efforts. That's all I have.
Bill, questions for Randy?
Yeah, Randy, thank you for all you do. We're lucky to have you, and you and your department does a great job. I also want to just recognize Steve Messenger's work at the transfer station. I've kind of become friends with Steve over the years. I always kind of check in with him when I'm up there, see how things are going. And you talked about the increased volume of cars and trips at the transfer station. You can see it, if you go there on a Sunday afternoon, even before the 3 o'clock rush. But I was there last Sunday at about 10 or 11 in the morning, and it was still, Hobart Street was still full of cars. So you can just see the amount and the volume increase in trips to the transport station. And I think individuals who worked have done a great job with it. My only real questions, Randy, are the 563 for snow removal. Joe asked about it. I didn't see what we allocated last year in the 20 and 21. Is it about the same every year, about 560 or so?
Yes.
All right. And my follow-up question is, how much of the snow removal work is contracted out, and how much is done by our own DPW staff?
We have about 80 pieces of equipment that go out, and we also contract around 80 pieces, give or take there. Depends on who gets their paperwork in for a storm. And am I right, Randy, that if the snow falls during the regular workday, like 7 to 4, 8 to 4, 8 to 5, that our employees that the DPW employees would do snow removal duties, not as overtime, but overnight, obviously a weekend, that will be charged in the overtime request that you have there? I'm not sure if I understand. If it starts snowing on a regular workday, then we're out working on that workday. Once we get into overtime, the overtime goes into the overtime budget. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Randy. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Randy, thank you. I'm just going to pick up on, since we're talking about kind of snow removal. I was looking for it in my budget book. I'm going off memory, but I'm pretty sure that the 5-year average for snow removal is somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 million.
Yes.
So I want to be really clear here with everybody. We have a structural deficit. We chronically underfund snow removal. And, one snowstorm, Randy, the last snowstorm we had, what was that, about $250,000?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So, right now, we've been really lucky because we've only had like one plowable event. We've had two, like a different event with a little bit of salt or sand. But what happens every year in the budget is that under Massachusetts law, municipalities can deficit spend on snow removal. But I'm going to be like really honest here, and I've been part of the group for the last 11 years that has done this. Every year we say we need to actually fund snow and ice to what it really is. And every year we get a lot of budget requests, and we say, well, we could add more money to snow removal, or we could, hire another police officer, or hire another teacher, or, we could spend on some necessary capital. And as a town, and I've been part of this, we've kind of kicked the can down the road on snow removal. So, 5 years ago, the deficit was maybe $200,000. It's now like $400,000. And I think at some point, in some years we say, well, we'll throw another $25,000 in there or another 50,000 in there. At some point, we just are going to have to be honest about funding this. And while I don't think we necessarily want to fund it to, $1 million a year, and 5 years ago, we spent $2 million on snow removal. That was actually 6 years ago. That was the year that we got, 150 inches of snow. But I think as a town, we have to start making some meaningful increases to the snow removal budget, because at the end of the year, what we have to do is we have to take money out of our rainy day fund to pay for this. So that's just kind of my plug. Randy, I appreciate that you are taking a look at transfer station fees. The town actually received a letter a couple weeks ago from a citizen asking this very question. I think in particular, as we're looking at service demands across the town, including in public works, people are asking if we have any opportunities within our existing fee structure, if we're being competitive with fees. And I think that Tom and Michelle, it would be a good idea when that analysis is complete to have Randy come into a selectmen's meeting. I remember back in 2008 when we had the last kind of global recession, there was talk about a transfer station fee, and the public outcry was strongly against it. But I think these are different times, and if for no other reason, the cost of doing the environmentally responsible thing has gone up. And so
environmentally mandated thing, Mary.
Well, yeah, and Randy's getting all kinds of mandates, and it used to be that we made a lot of money on recycling. We're not doing that anymore. So I will look forward to seeing that analysis, Randy, and I do think we as a town have to give serious consideration to whether whether we want to adjust the structure on that in any way. Randy, I would just close by saying that despite the pandemic, you and your team have continued to work, continue to just help take care of the town, help in so many different ways. I also appreciate that, your department supports a lot of civic efforts in the community, whether it's, keeping the bathing beach clean, or, supporting the Boy Scouts with their tree drive, or allowing the civic groups to still collect the recycling revenue. For a lot of the civic organizations that rely on the generosity of the transfer of the Public Works Department, whether it's with people or time or support, you've continued to provide it in COVID. And I just really, really do appreciate that. And I know all those organizations do too.
I appreciate that, Mary.
At this point, I would ask if there's anyone in the public who has a question or wishes to make a comment about the public works budgets. Okay. And Randy, I'd also note that last year, it took about 6 years, but you got an assistant.
Yes, I did. Matt Cahill is his name. He's been on board for about three weeks now. So
he's a veteran.
He's
a veteran by now. He's been up for
he's a veteran by now. Yeah.
Well, given all the many demands on your department, that was something that was. We're so glad that the taxpayers agreed to fund that position, and we're so glad that Matt has joined the team.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Next on, we're going to take up the Board of Health budget, and we are joined by our Executive Health Officer, Susan Sarney. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Good evening.
Otherwise known as Superwoman.
Thank you, Tom. I guess I'll start off with the non-COVID things that we've been doing in the beginning of the year and throughout the year. we have Betty Nee, my health agent, who's really in charge of all the non-COVID world. We have septic systems, well permits, building permits, food permits. We have a social worker, beach water testing, complaints, hoarding, tobacco control, and housing inspections. And here's you can get a glimpse of all the different kind of permits. We use Permitize, similar to the building department, for all food permits. As you can see here, we have perk tests, soil evaluations, like Randy was speaking about sewer. 65% of the town is on septic systems. We've seen a slight uptick in septic failures and new systems going in because everybody's home. And then I'll just go into some of the COVID things that we've been doing throughout the year. We've been educating citizens on COVID-19 guidance, including isolation and quarantine. Our public health nurse, and we have a outreach person helping us out with that, along with the community tracing collaborative that's employed by the state. We have explored the COVID testing options using the site Empathy on Cushing Street, and now the schools are also doing testing for their teachers. They're doing something called pool testing for COVID, and I believe they started this week. We're getting ready to roll out the vaccine. We successfully vaccinated, I believe, 160 first responders last week. I ordered vaccine for our next rollout today. And we were able to get some funding separate from the CARES Act from the Mass Department of Public Health. I believe I have around $25,000 to $30,000 for use in our department on supplies and personnel. I think that's it. I can read it, but. For salaries, we have 3 full-time people. Myself, we have a full-time admin and our health agent. We have 3 part-time. I have a public health nurse who's about 23.5 hours. I have a food inspector who's about 16 hours, and I have a social worker who's 20 hours. I believe this is her 2nd year. Our expense is around $19,000.
Bill Ramsey, questions for Susan on the Board of Health budget?
Your budget looks pretty close to what it was last year, so I have no specific questions, but want to just thank you for all that you're doing. I know you've been going above and beyond the last year, and all of your efforts to keep us safe are very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Joe?
Yeah, Michelle, could you put up slide 3 from the presentation? There.
Was it this one or one more?
It's that's next one.
Can't see it.
This one. So this is the most important topic here. What are the frozen dessert permits? And how do we get in on that?
Do you really want the answer?
I don't know what I didn't realize.
It is, Joe. Well, since you asked, it's when you take ice cream and you make it in a machine and you can add things, like Nona's has a base. So you have to give out a frozen dessert permit because it has milk in it and it can go bad. So you really need to keep an eye on those establishments that have it.
Got it. That was the most interesting for me part of that list of permits. Getting back to the rest of the budget. With respect, first, before getting to COVID, with respect to the septic inspections, are we on track? Is there a lag, or because part of it's going out into people's homes, and that's I would assume to be a challenging situation in a COVID world. So how are you doing in that in terms of doing the septic inspections?
Oh, we've been doing 3 inspections all along. Betty Nee does all the perk tests. So a perk test is to test the soil. She's a state soil evaluator. And then we proceed and I'll review all the septic plans and then she'll do the 3 inspections to be compliant along with the engineer.
On COVID, you mentioned that the shots we've given. What's the schedule for the next COVID vaccine clinic? Do you know when the next clinic is going to be happening?
Yes, we are in line to do. It's at the end of phase 1. I don't know the letter tier, but it's going to be non-COVID facing healthcare workers, right, and health aides are the next tier that we're going to be doing. Right now, we're developing a list of all those people in town who right. are either working or have a brick and mortar, and we'll be sending an email out to them and they can register using PrepMod for that clinic.
But in terms of timing, is this like next week, next month? I'm trying to understand what that looks like. And also to the extent, and I don't know if we currently have vials that need to be used. So do we have clinics scheduled on an ongoing basis, or we just wait for the state to authorize something? What's that schedule look like? So
the next big clinic will be the week of February 1st. That's what I ordered vaccine for. We only have 20 doses, which we're going to be having a small clinic to be sure we have all our first responders and anyone else who's above in that tier who might have changed their mind and want to get the vaccine. So I'm only holding on to 20. I'm going to be ordering vaccine weekly. So I'm not planning on holding a lot of inventory, and we'll be using it up and booking those clinics according.
Because I know I've gotten calls, I don't know if others have, from members of the town saying, when can we schedule? What's happening? And so I'm just trying to figure out what the schedule looks like going forward. It sounds like the next real rollout is not till February 1st, and then you'll be keeping the town informed about future clinics. Is that fair?
Correct.
And one final question. When we give the vaccines, do we bill for the shots? Are we getting compensated? And if you could break that down, I know that it may depend on who's giving the shot, whether it's a volunteer or the paramedics, but I didn't know what our billing system was for that.
In general, you can always bill for a vaccine. So for the COVID vaccine, I found out today, if we are administering 2 doses, which we will be, we can charge for our services. It's a service fee. You can't ever charge anybody for the actual vaccine.
Okay.
We're given that for free. So in the whole United States, they're free vaccine, but a town can charge because we need to pay somebody to do that, right, a salary or a wage, and we can charge up to $90 for the 2 doses. Right now, we're going to be signing up for that software systems. It's linked into the PrepMod for billing. So it's when you register, you get a link, you register, and you can put your insurance in there. And it's a wireless system that will go to your insurance for billing purposes.
And is that limited to COVID? Like when we do the regular flu shots at the town, could we do that same reimbursement?
Yes. Typically that's $28.
Okay. Wonderful. I really appreciate everything you've done. And every day I know there's a new set of facts or new issues that pop up, and somehow you stay on top of it all. So thank you.
Thank you.
Susan, thank you. It bears noting that while many people have gotten to know you and gotten to know who you are because of COVID, as the executive health officer for the town, you have many other responsibilities, and those responsibilities haven't gone away because of COVID. So I'm glad in this budget presentation that you reminded us all of the other important work of health departments. I don't think this town can thank you enough for your dedication, for your professionalism, and for your advocacy for the town of Hingham and all of our residents. COVID has taken a toll on each of us in different ways, And I think for you, it's been very significant because of the nature of your role. It has been a privilege for me to see your commitment to the town. And I think people should know that since last March, you've literally been working around the clock 7 days a week. There haven't been a lot of vacations. There haven't been a lot of weekends. And when people have been scared, when people have been angry, when people have been confused, you've been as professional and as responsive as ever. And I'm only sorry that COVID has taken, I know that it's been such a difficult year for you and your team. And I regret that that's happened, but I am so, and we as a town, I'm speaking for 23,000 people. We are just so grateful for everything that you've done. And I'm looking forward to the day sometime this summer when more of us can gather in person, because we would all like to thank you in person. But again, Susan, I'm struggling for words to convey the appreciation and the respect and the admiration that we all have for you and what you've done. So thank you very much.
Can I just say I couldn't do it, but I didn't do it by myself. I have a wonderful health team and we just keep going. I have a wonderful command team. There's nobody who should take one responsibility. We all make decisions together and I've been there with them. We set up calls in the beginning, and when you looked at your calendar, everything was blue. There was no Saturday or Sunday. It was just, it's with Tom, Michelle, Murphy, and police. Everybody stepped forward, but thank you for those kind words.
Well, and thank you for, yes, I mean, this has been a total team effort, and you and your team are, you're kind of the hub in the wheel. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to ask a question or make a comment with respect to the Board of Health budget? Okay, Susan, thank you. And I would also note that in Tom's COVID-19 report, I think there's going to be a little more information about vaccinations, so that'll be coming up shortly. Next, I'd like to welcome Linda Harper, our library director. I see, I'm just looking and I see that we are joined by Chair of the Board of Trustees, Lucy Hancock, and the Treasurer for the Hingham Library Corporation, Jeremy Parker. Linda, if I've overlooked any of your other trustees in my participant list, I'd appreciate your letting me know, but I'll turn it over to you. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mary. And I took a look. I think those are the trustees in attendance. I didn't see anybody else, but if anyone else is there, please speak up. But thank you, Mary. So if we could go on with the slides, I'll begin with the mission and services of the library. I want to mention that for those of you who know the library, you may use one or two or maybe 3 or 4 different things, but we do a lot of different things for a lot of different people. We wear many, many hats. What one person comes in to use the library for can be completely different than someone else who comes in. That said, some of the things that we do, our mission and services, I'll just go through this for a moment. We provide materials and services that contribute to and enhance personal enrichment, enjoyment, and educational endeavors of its patrons. We nurture personal growth, stimulate intellectual curiosity, and encourage lifelong learning. We encourage early childhood literacy. We enable individuals of all ages to explore their community and the world through cultural, artistic, historical, and informational programs and displays. We provide service on equal terms to all individuals in the community and work towards the development of the individual as a citizen, and by example, the removal of ignorance, intolerance, and indifference in the community. We strive to be a community center and a destination where residents of all ages can meet to exchange ideas, discuss issues, and enjoy a nonpartisan atmosphere. And we offer a diverse collection of print, media, electronic materials that meet patrons' recreational and educational needs and interests, by including both popular and current titles and literary classics. It's not just books that the library does. We have books, we have programs, we do many, many other things. Next slide, please. Benchmarks and metrics. Because of COVID-19, everything, as we know, the world stopped in March, which included a lot of our statistics that we usually collect and compare to benchmark year over year. What I have listed on this slide is what we've done so far, pretty much through March when everything changed. But just to give you an idea of how busy the library is and the diverse things we do, I'd like to go over some of these statistics. We had 165,623 people of all ages who visited the library through March of 2020. We loaned 287,288 books, ebooks, movies, music, magazines, technology, digital and electronic equipment, art, puzzles, and games to adults, to teens, and to children. 43,976 items were sent between libraries for holds through our interlibrary loan delivery service. 13,892 adults, teens, and children attended 774 library programs and events. Those are all in person when we were all still meeting in person. 11,280 Hingham residents have active library cards. These are library cards that they have actively used within the past 3 years. 108,832 times that people connected to our Wi-Fi from their devices was within the library. This is one of those items that we've seen increase year after year. More and more people are coming to the library to use the space and to connect on their own devices to work from home or do what they need to using our Wi-Fi service. Our reference and professional staff answered 3,450 research and reference questions. Those are some of the busy things, and those are all a lot of the traditional things that libraries have been doing within the past 10, 20, 30, 40, 200 years. Then March happened, and we had to quickly find a new way to do business from a model that has existed since we all can remember. Next slide, please. Thank you. Some of the, and I'll get to that in a minute. Key initiatives. Some of the things we want to do coming up. Development of a new long-range strategic plan to guide our goals and activities for fiscal 22 through 26. This will be done using data collected through community surveys and meetings. Every 5 years, we do a new long-range plan. It helps set a compass and a guide for what we need to be focusing on for the next 5 years. We also file that with the state. It enables us to apply for different grants, things of that nature. We also are going to continue evaluating and adapting existing services, spaces, and collections in response to the changing needs and expectations of our patrons, including the enhancement of digital offerings such as ebooks and online programming via Zoom, developed and expanded in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 pandemic has made us change the way we do business very quickly, very drastically. We had to find ways to provide library services so people had access to library materials, both online and physical. We also had to make sure that they had access to professional staff to help them with any research, anything they needed. Also technology, our technology team who's offered one-on-one technology help, Zoom classes. Suddenly the whole world realizes if they didn't know how to use Zoom, they couldn't go to work anymore. So we very quickly, in short order, changed the way we did business overnight. Some of the things that we've seen are not traditional things that we've been tracking to the extent that we've seen the usage increase. One of the things that have increased is our ebook usage. It increased 32.68% from fiscal 19 to 20. And mind you, this is just through fiscal 20. This year, it's increasing even more. So when I come back with these stats next year, I think you guys are going to be blown away. But ebook usage has increased. We're teaching people how to get online and get their electronic resources. So if they're uncomfortable with getting physical resources, they can still continue lifelong learning. Our e-audio collection, which is downloadable audiobooks, movies, and music, increased 42.58%. Network electronic collections and database usage. So that's when you go on, you need to look up something from a professional database or a newspaper or an investment journal, any of those kind of things. It increased over 100%, 100.93%. It just skyrocketed. We have all these wonderful resources and people are finally discovering them, which is great. And we're teaching them how to use them. The other thing we've been doing is we do a lot of, as you know, lifelong learning. We focus on early education for the kids' literacy programs. Because of COVID, we needed to continue that in a new way. Just like the schools had to go online, we found a way to go online and offer all our educational and recreational programs. So from March through October, we had 3,528 people who virtually attended online 391 online programs. These included author talks, lectures, book groups, story times, family events, technology classes, Zoom tutorials, arts, craft, cooking classes and programs. We also had a guitar concert from the Boston Classic Guitar Society. We're trying to reach people. The other thing I know, when Jennifer was talking about the senior center, we realized a lot of people are isolated and lonely. So we offered drop-in coffee hours. We'd teach them how to use Zoom and they can just come and just chat with somebody. So they have somebody to talk to. The numbers now, those same numbers, just through December of last year, through March from December, I took a look today to see how much that has increased. To date, through the end of December, we've offered 475 programs, out of which 4,743 people have attended online. Things have changed, people are adjusting, and we're trying to reach out to people the best we can. Next slide, please. Staff and expenses. Our salaries for this fiscal 22 are $1,559,866. This includes 12 full-time personnel, 23 part-time personnel. We have expenses of $369,200 even. And some of our major items, if you see the details, are our usual repair and maintenance from our aging building, utilities, which have gone up this year, books and material, which is always a slight increase as we need new and more expensive materials, and our OCLN network assessment, which only saw a small increase. It was capped this year to help libraries basically manage through this pandemic. So basically, it's been an interesting year. We've changed overnight in ways that we thought would happen maybe in the next 15 years. I would like to thank all the staff of the library, as well as the trustees, the custodians, and all the town departments who have helped us through these changes. The staff to basically work out of job grade, job description. We said, how can we reach people? And they come up with ideas and they do it, has just blown me away. They've been jumping in to help all the other town departments. We have wonderful people in the library who are just trying to make a good experience for the residents of Hingham in really tough times. So that's basically it. Do I have any questions?
Yeah, Linda, thank you. You know, that the teamwork that your team has exhibited both within the library and within the town is just really, it's just amazing and incredible. Joe, questions for Linda about the library budget?
Just a few, Linda. Thank you very much. You anticipated my first question, which was to be a follow-up question with respect to the senior center and the coordination activity that your group has been involved with. I know is very much appreciated and very much needed. Let me ask, is the library open now? Can people go in?
The library building itself is closed to the public. However, we are providing a contactless hold service. So all our collections are still available to the public. People can call us, they can put them on holds. What we'll do is we'll get them ready, we'll check them out. We put them in bags with the patron's name on them, and then the patron can choose a date. They can say, I'll come in on Thursday, so they can come anytime. And when you enter the building, the first set of doors, there's like a little vestibule area. We've set up a pickup station so people can come in, pick up their bag and go. It's checked out. They don't have to interact with staff. There's no contact basically. So it's a really safe and secure way for both the patrons and the staff to continue to get library materials. And I will note, because of COVID concerns, and there is a concern about it staying on library materials, we do quarantine all library materials that come into the building for 5 days before they're handled. That's recommended across the state by the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, based on the data of trying to figure out how long the virus lives on surfaces. So we can be pretty confident that when patrons pick up books, they are safe to handle.
Great. Thank you. That's really all I have.
Bill?
Linda, thank you. That was very thorough. Appreciate what you and the trustees do. I have no questions.
Linda, I had one question about the budget, and it has to do with the books and periodicals line. And I'm looking in just over 3 years. If I compare the 22 to the 19, it's gone up by about 66%, from $45,000 to about 76. And I believe last year, I believe in the last couple of years when we've talked about the budget, this is both additions to the collection, but my sense is as well is that the trustees through the endowment have invested in new items in the collection, and the town has. But I think over time that shifted a little bit, and the town is the town is funding more of the increase in the collection. Is that I'm just curious how the FY22 proposed investment is, is it the same split as last year? Is it, what's that look like?
Yes, that is an excellent question. Thank you, Mary, for bringing that up. It's an interesting way that we come to find the book budget. And the book budget, we call it book budget. It's books, it's periodicals, it's anything that we loan through the library. It's the movies, it's the music, it's the electronic databases. So there's a lot of things that comprises. Ebooks as well, so all the electronic resources. And how the formula works, so we apply for state aid through the Mass Board of Library Commissioners, and they have a formula that they ask all libraries across the state to complete. The idea is that libraries continue to be funded at a rate where they can continue to purchase new materials, because you can't be a library if you don't have the newest information, and they want to make sure that they are funded across the board. So what that basically does is it takes the last 3 fiscal years appropriations for the library operating. You take the average of a 3-year sum and you multiply it by 1.02, which is basically a 2.5% over the 3-year average. It's not 2.5% over prior year. Now, what you see when you see your budget, or I should say what you don't see, is what the trustees do. So
right.
The Hingham Public Library Corporation has their own budget, and they primarily fund the majority of our book and materials purchases. So what happens is they have a number which is about 215,000. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but it's on one of my pieces of paper. But it's about $215,000 every year. So that's their portion that they put towards our materials purchases. So most of our new books are actually purchased through the trustees' budget. And what happens because of this formula that I mentioned that the state asks us all to do, the book budget is going to increase a little bit every year. The trustees have been working basically to try to keep their costs down. They work a little bit out a deficit every year. It's in and out, but they're trying to control their costs. So at 215,000, they've frozen that number, and they're trying to put the delta, the amount of the change, onto the town, which is why in your town budget, you'll see that slowly creeping up. Now, at one point, it had been very small, and the trustees had been putting the difference on their side as well. It's become unsustainable over time.
Yep.
With especially, how much revenue they come in, their other expenses. So they froze that, and the delta goes on to the town. So that's why you see a difference on the town. Yep. This year, actually, on our books and materials, we have this is actually a 14.1% increase over the previous year. The actual dollar amount that we're asking the town to fund versus the year before is a $9,381.
Yep.
And that formula.
Yeah, and so that represents kind of 2% of the entire budget. So what you have is you have a books budget that's close to $300,000 in a year.
Correct.
But so the 2% is calculated on that.
Correct. It's based on the Well, that's what you see. Yeah, it's based on the average of the 3-year total appropriation for operating expenses.
Mhm. And
For the
Linda,
municipal-
given some of the shift that you described in terms of more people with ebooks, and I understand that the collection and that in the books budget we have to pay for all of this, but to the extent that that more people are gravitating towards some of the online things, does cost-wise is that a lower cost to the library, or is the printed book cheaper?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. The printed book is cheaper, and the printed
Wow.
book, we buy it, we own it in perpetuity. We can have it forever.
Okay.
Forever. When we purchase an ebook, the cost is greater, and it's a licensed item. We don't own it. We own it for a certain amount of loans or a certain time period. We actually don't own it like we own a physical book in perpetuity.
Wow. Wow.
Cost is higher. The audiobooks online and the ebooks online, and I know libraries have been fighting with publishers since ebooks started coming out, and it's a constant battle because obviously they're not recouping their costs, which is why they charge us more. It's still a little bit of the Wild West. What's going to happen between models, and sometimes they keep flipping. Sometimes they start saying, well, we're not going to loan to libraries anymore, and then they'll go ahead and change to a different model. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes that means we have to make some hard choices. So a physical book, if it has a long holds list, we might purchase multiple copies, 5 copies or so. If there's, we try to keep a ratio of, a copy for every 4 holds or so. So a popular item, you can get it fairly soon. But ebooks, we don't have the same capacity to do that.
No, that's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah,
would anyone in the public like to ask a question or make a comment? Joe, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. I neglected to ask, looking at the budget, it looks like your electric utilities are projected to go up about 20%. And I'm wondering why that's the case, particularly if the library itself is really not open to the public right now.
That's a very good question. So the electric rate, so as you know, we get a fuel and utilities worksheet from the town. The town looks at the rates that the departments are supposed to use. And our rates went up this year. I don't have what last year's sheet was, I could find it, but offhand, the cost per kilowatt hour increased to the town. Part of that had to do with the demand usage that they found out last year and they're trying to account for. I think Michelle or Tom could probably explain the increase probably a little better than I could. So we looked at that and we based it on our same kilowatt hours as last year, and it was even higher. So then we went back and said, whoa, this is crazy. So we checked to make sure it wasn't a mistake in the rate, and it wasn't. So then we went back and looked at all our kilowatt hours for the past 10 years or so. And what we did, instead of funding it, so in fiscal 21, we funded 633 kilowatt hours. We didn't use it all, and we thought, well, let's see if we can scale this back a bit. So we looked at our past 10 years or so, what our highest kilowatt hour usage was, or pretty close to it, which was about 600,000. We thought, well, we'll bring it down a little bit. That should account for the fact that we're not using, as much electricity, but we do have staff working in the building, so the lights are still on, the heat is still going. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to see the great savings because we're still, the building is still being lit and heated while we're in it. But we did try to make our kilowatt hours usage a little more respectable. And then to offset that, I just want to call your attention to a reduction in natural gas. So the natural gas, we looked at that and we looked at our usage and thought, you know what, we're not, and we had, as you may know, a few years ago, we had some boilers put in that are a little more efficient. So we thought, well, let's take a look at our actual usage, see if we can scale back and save some money on that. So what we did was we scaled back our, the quantity that we asked for. So if you look at in 2021, We had asked for 38,168. We looked at our usage, tried to scale it back. So in 2022, we're asking for 31,200, which is an 18.3% reduction. It reduces that ask from last year, $6,968. And we're hoping that that offsets the increase in the electric rates that we actually can't control, which in fiscal 21, we were budgeted at 75,991. Fiscal 22, even reducing the kilowatt hours, it comes to 91,200 for an increase of 15,209, which is 20%. So one is up 15, the other's down almost 7. So we're hoping that it balances out a little bit.
I mean, this may be a question for Tom, but looking at the budgets that we've received from other town departments, I've not seen 20% increases in electric bills. So is there something different, or is the library being treated differently than other town departments by our electric company?
Oh, they're definitely not. There is, so some of the larger buildings, and Linda ran into this last year, as did Randy. There's just something called a demand charge from HMLP now.
Yeah.
That is a bit more taxing than it used to be. Part of this, Joe, is the methodology employed by the department heads as to how they project their usage and their anticipated costs. So, you know, is it 100% standard? No, it would be better if it were, but it is very much rate driven.
Okay. So Linda, is the staff working primarily from home, or are they coming in to work?
The staff, so we have a number of different staff who do different things. So my circulation staff, which are the people that when you come in, that you meet them at the desk, they're the ones helping find the books. They're doing all the physical work, unpacking, delivery. They're mostly working in the building because we need them there to move materials. We're still getting deliveries every day, lots of books moving back and forth. So circulation is strong. They're picking the holds off the shelf, things like that. Right. So those staff are working primarily in the buildings. We've reduced some shifts and moved them to keep the numbers down. We're being very, very cognizant of safety. So right. We're keeping them far apart. And if too many people are in the building, we'll give them tasks to do at home just to kind of keep those numbers down. But we need to keep that moving. Professional staff can pretty much do their job anywhere. So the people who order the books, they can do that online from at home. The people who are answering reference questions can answer them from home, any kind of research, things like that. So the professional and as well as administrative, Joan, who does the numbers, can get the bills and do them from home and enter them. So anyone who can work from home, we're trying to have them do that as much as possible to keep the numbers down in the building. And that also helps to alleviate some of the stress on our custodial staff who have a very large building. And we're basically disinfecting the whole day. Staff have protocols they're trying to follow. So it's, we're trying to keep it as safe as possible. So anyone who can work from home, we're trying to do that. And with the digital programming, most people are doing that from home.
One final question. Is the budget we have, is this the library budget, or is this the town's portion of the library budget?
That is an excellent question. It is the town's portion of the library budget. The trustees, and I think Jeremy's on the call. I don't know if he would want to speak to that, but the trustees have a budget of their own that supplements this. Like I mentioned, the 215,000 books is part of that. They also, through our annual fundraising drive, try to get in revenue to offset it because they have to earn the money that they spend. This year with COVID, most of our revenue has dried up. Our revenue from fines and overdue fees and copy machines and vending machines is non-existent. So I know it's going to be a challenging year for the trustees.
Do we have, is the full budget presented to the selectmen? If this isn't it, do we have the full budget?
Not in this format, but we certainly can put something together and circulate it to you. That would be.
Yeah, Linda, last year, I think it was either last year or the year before. I think it may have been Ed Siegfried at the time with Jeremy, but just provided it. And, I know there's a trustees meeting tomorrow night where we're going to go through the budget, but I think it might be instructive, particularly for Joe and Bill, to see, to see the gross budget, because to Joe's point, what you're seeing here is this is just the town's contribution. And I think it would be helpful to see.
Right, and I guess just to build on that, it's difficult for me to judge the reasonableness of the budget without seeing the whole budget, because there may be an increase, not because there's a real increase, but because the portion being funded by the trustees is being reduced. So for me to say, well, why do we have this jump? Well, maybe there is no jump. It's just the way the budgeting is being allocated between the trustees and the town.
Mary,
yeah.
It's Lucy.
Yeah, I'm going to recognize Lucy Hancock. Lucy, if you could give your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Lucy Hancock, 15 Amber Road. We've been discussing this in the past, and I think we determined last fall that because the timing of the two budgets is somewhat different, we would be providing the town with a copy of the library's corporation budget, but that usually isn't put together until later in the year. And this year we're depending a lot on state aid and fundraising, and so we don't have all the numbers. We have a budget, but we're still working it through. And Jeremy, if you want to chime in too, but remember, we did talk about this last fall.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you for reminding me. Jeremy, if you had anything to add.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. Yeah, Jeremy Parker, 186A Hall Street. Yes, Joe, you and Mary, you did absolutely bring this up last year, and I'm sorry that you didn't have it in advance of this meeting, but I think what we had agreed that we would always provide is sort of the previous year's budget. It's just as Lucy described. The trustees' budget is usually put together in May of each year. So we haven't even put together the fiscal year 22 budget, but the fiscal year 21 budget and the preceding, I think, 4 years of trustees budget was what we had had agreed and proposed to always provide as part of the budgeting cycle. So if that was omitted this year, my apologies, and I'll work with Linda to make sure that you guys get copies of that. It's always presented to the Board of Trustees and the Selectmen liaison to the board. So we can certainly provide that. Just a very quick glimpse, Joe, into to the questions being asked about the books. Just as I think Mary pointed out, the overall required materials expense which is 15% of the total appropriated municipal number is I think like $291,000, and that exceeds the trustees' revenues in any given year and has exceeded it for some time, which, going back to what Linda was describing, is why the trustees had worked with the town and agreed to essentially freeze the trustees' portion at that $215,568 for the books and materials. That was back in like 2017. Because that basically is 100% of the revenue.
Is that the only item that the trustees contribute to, is the books?
No, there's a number of other items. The other biggest one is the programs. The programs that Linda detailed in any given year is about $20,000. I think this most recent year the budget was $18,000. I think we pulled it back a little bit, and Linda and Lucy, you can correct me if I'm off on that, but I know it's usually right in that sort of $15,000 to $20,000 range. Those are the two largest items, are the books, materials, and programs.
So Mary, maybe you can help me, because I'm still not getting it. If we have the fiscal year 22 budget, there has to be a trustees budget behind it, because we need to add that together to get the full budget. So maybe it's not published, but I don't see how we can have a budget from the library for 22 for the town without there also being a trustees budget.
So I think what I'm hearing, and Linda and Lucy and Jeremy jump, I think what I'm hearing is that there are parts of the trustee budget with respect to programming and things like that the trustees have not finalized yet, because they are also looking at those things are funded by revenue that the trustees collect. They collect it through the annual fundraising letter. They collect it through fines, through the vending machines, etc.
Right. And
so I think it's that portion of the budget. What I might suggest, because I think the the piece you might be looking for, Joe, is the books budget. I think that's the piece that you might be looking for.
And I'm looking for the budget for the library, and then it's going to be divided. There's going to be the town side and the trustee side.
Yeah.
So
right, but it's not. So, for example, if you look at the staff,
yeah,
and again, Linda and Lucy jump in here. But if you look at the staff slide that's up on the screen, there are 12 full-time personnel. The town pays for those. The town bears the full cost. The town bears the cost of the large majority of the operating costs of the library. The trustees, through their endowment, contribute to the library budget in two primary ways. One is in the books budget. And so you have a formula that says this is how much it has to increase year over year. And the town is essentially committed to funding 100% of that increase because we didn't want to dip into the principal from the endowment.
Sure.
The other piece that the library funds that you don't see in our budget books are many of the programs, the speakers, the concerts, the different things like that. And those are not developed until May because Linda and the trustees don't know how much revenue they have to fund all those things. Linda, am I explaining that?
Mary, that is a fabulous thing. And when you see the budget show, it's going to make a lot more sense. But basically, exactly what Mary said, the two things that the trustees do are they provide a hefty amount for the books, materials budget, books and other things. Sure. And they pay 100% of the programs. So all the programs that you heard me talk about with the attendance and that we offer is 100% funded through the trustees. Because it's revenue driven, they don't develop the budget until May. So May is when we have our annual trustees meeting that they vote on the next year's budget cycle. So the town and the trustees have different budget cycles for different reasons. Theirs primarily because it's based on their fundraising and revenue, but we know that the trustees will be paying for all the programs and at least that, frozen 215,000 of books. There's a few miscellaneous things in there, but inconsequential. So that's helpful. You'll get it when you see it. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that all of those library expenses, the programming is not included in that. That's a separate item that will be funded by the trustees.
The only thing you're paying for, we're sharing really, is the books and materials, and different sources of funds, different things we're purchasing. I think it would help if we do share with you this current year, fiscal year 21 trustee budget, so you'll see what's in it. We can look back at our finance committee minutes from last fall, last spring, and see what we plan to do. But we did talk about the need to share with the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator and assistant administrator just exactly how we're coming up with our numbers and how they relate. So we can go back and look at how we did that, and we can do that offline.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, yeah.
And
thank you.
I would add one thing to that. If it's helpful to think about it, the town generally pays for all the staffing and all it takes to run the building. And the trustees pay for a good amount of the educational materials, which is the books and the programs.
And Mary, I would like to add that the annual fund is still looking for donations. So anybody who's listening, if you'd like to give money to the library, we'd love to have your check.
Yeah, thank you.
Or your electronic donation.
Right.
Members of the public, would anyone like to ask a question or make a comment about the library budget? Okay. Linda, Lucy, Jeremy, thank you very much. And please pass along our thanks and appreciation to the staff and the trustees for, as I mentioned, all the great teamwork. The last two budgets that we'll be taking up this evening are the budget for the town clerk's office and for the elections. And we are joined by our town clerk, Eileen McCracken. Welcome, Eileen. Thank you for being here. I will turn it over to you. Eileen, I think you're muted.
There, I was.
There we go.
Not very smart.
Loud and clear.
Okay. How are you tonight?
Good, welcome.
Good. My mission and services are, I run all of the elections. We handle vital records, licenses and permits, and the licenses and permits are things like business certificates. And the violations we collect are building, zoning, fire, and parking. We do all the vote certification for the annual town meeting. The Selectmen's office handles the rest of the town meeting. We handle the census. When we send out the census, we either add or change people's information for them. The public records access officer is anybody that requests a public records comes through my office. Historical and genealogy researches we do, and we schedule all the meetings. We don't schedule them, we put them into the system so that people will be able to see them online. The next slide, please. This slide is showing the last group of elections that we've had and what the number of voters is and the turnout. That was just a slide that I thought we'd slip in there. The next slide, please. Okay. Oh, that's a different slide than I have. This next year, we do not have a presidential election in all of those. The only election that we have is the town election. And we would manage any kind of mail-in ballots or early voting ballots that we would have to handle. The early voting or anything like that most of it ended in December of 2020. There was an extension through the 31st of March, but that's not helping any town elections. So they're looking into extending that so that we would be able to still do early voting for people that need it because of the COVID-19. We do public records requests, historic preservation, and the Bear Cove Park off-leash permits. Right at the moment, we're not able to give the people their actual tag because they have to come in and sign for them. So we're sending a list to Scott McMillan so that he would know the people that may not have their tag, but they already have the off-leash permit. May I have the next slide? COVID-19 impacts. Well, one of the nice things that we were able to do during the election time is that because of COVID, people weren't able to come in and do tax work-off programs with us. So I was so lucky that I had work for them to do. So the people were able to come in and help us, and it helped a lot of people with tax work-off. The tax work-off program, as you know, helps people with their taxes. They work, I'm sorry, I don't know the number of hours, but they work a certain amount of hours in the different departments, and they have an amount taken off their taxes. We also had closed the town hall to all the other offices during the early voting. And that was good because it was, I think that it helped keep people safe. And it also, we had a big volume. So the volume, I think we would have had a difficulty if we had people in the offices and also coming in for early voting. I had an increase in postage because of the early voting, and because of that, I had it caused an overspending of $2,000. But since then, the state has reimbursed us $4,190, which I will be able to put back, and now I'll have enough money for the town election. And another thing that I didn't put on this COVID-19 impacts is that when we first closed, there were a lot of sad brides that couldn't get married because all of their everything was stopped. So, but they still wanted to get married. So usually it would take 15-20 minutes for them to fill out all their paperwork. So what we did is we will email, and we're still doing that. We would email out the paperwork for them. They would send it back to us and we would check and make sure everything looks okay. And then the people would come in to the office and make an appointment with us, come into the office so that they could sign the paperwork. Then again, later they have to come back, and there's a 3-day waiting period. So they have to come back and sign it. And
Eileen, I noticed you left off the sad grooms.
sad grooms. Yes, I did. There were sad grooms. The grooms were a lot of the times the ones that would call, or their mother, or the bride's mothers, one or the other. But a lot of the towns were not doing marriage licenses, so we had a lot more marriage licenses this past year, which was kind of interesting.
Eileen, I do have to ask. So people come in, and then there's a 3-day waiting period. How many of them opt out and they don't come back?
We've only had a few. There's only like 1 or 2 a year. But yeah, they don't. Some of them don't come back. I thought, oh my. But yes, I know, that's all right. Because it is interesting. That whole marriage license thing is quite interesting for all of us. So in the town clerk's office, we have, well, right now I have 4 people that are working in the department. I have 2 part-time, 2 full-time. But when we were doing the budgets, Tom and Michelle and I had thought that it might be, and I think Sue Nixon had a little bit to do with it, thought that maybe it would be better, since I will be leaving and my assistant, Liz McVarish's, her last day is on Thursday. It would be better if there were 3 full-time employees. I also had a woman that would come in and file for us on Friday and also answer the phone. She was 95 years old. She would come in and do that for us. She was wonderful. Everybody would be so thrilled to see her on a Friday, because they knew it was Friday because she was in on on Friday. But she, so I'm firing her. Tom told me not to say that. No, he didn't want to be the one to fire her. No, I'm actually not firing her. I think that she's at the point that she wouldn't be coming in, but
Is age a requirement for that position?
No.
My mom will be 97. Can I send her?
She will be. That would be wonderful. You know, my mom would have loved to have done that. She started off as a tax work-off person, and then she moved into, we had an opening, and she moved into the position, and she was so great on the phone. She had that, you know, the professionalism of the older people, I guess you could say. She could answer any question, probably better than I could sometimes, but she was wonderful, and we will miss her. But okay, so the salary amount is $195,000, and then my expenses are $5,616. That's for town clerk, and I also should have election. Yeah. So elections, I have approximately 42 people. This is for just a town election. We have that. We usually would have more because we would have early voting, and that comes to 69,000, and then the expenses. This year, the expenses for the computers services went up, and the reason is we had bought new poll pads. And the poll pads now, you have to maintain them, and so the service agreement or whatever has gone up because of that. And I think that's all I have for you.
Bill, questions for Eileen?
Come on, Bill.
In FY21, I saw an expense for $10,000. Was that for a voting equipment machine, or?
That was for the poll pads that we got. The poll pads are the little ones that if you went to early voting, they're a little machine that you could either put your license on it and it would read your license and you would be checked in that way, or they could just take the first 3 letters of your first name and last name and we would put you through.
Great. And Eileen, you're going to be hearing this a lot between now and the spring, but just wanted to commend you on your tremendous service to the town, and you have truly served with honor and distinction, and we are a better town because of you. So thank you for everything.
Gosh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's
Joe?
been my pleasure.
Joe?
Yes, Eileen, so you will be missed.
No more dance moves.
I am so sorry to see you not coming back. On the budget, I had a question. You have your clerical services part-time going from a little over 44,000 to 0 for fiscal year 22. Why is that?
Is that my town budget or
Yeah,
my?
this is the town budget, clerical services part-time. This is under 11,611.
Eileen, you want me to answer it?
Please.
Joe, that's the part where they're taking away the part-time positions,
Okay.
which are currently Liz and our
Ginny.
Friday phone covering, Ginny. And you'll notice that the clerical full-time jumped by almost the same amount.
Okay.
For a total, which was very, actually a little lower than last year.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. And with respect to town meeting services, still on that same budget page.
Oh, yes.
That's going from 2250 to 0 as well.
Yes, that is going to the town meeting budget instead of it being in the town clerk's budget. I think it was in the town clerk's budget before because we hold the document when it comes back to us.
Yep.
And I have the feeling that's why it was always in the town clerk's budget, but I think being in town meeting is probably just as well.
Okay. And then turning to the elections budget, the custodial services in fiscal year 21 were a little over 26,000, and for 22 it's down to 4,700. That's
because of the number of elections, and it isn't custodial; it's the whole group. It's
I'm sorry, it was clerical, not custodial. I apologize.
It fluctuates according to how many elections I have each year.
Got it.
So we had 4. I'm sorry, we had 3 in the last fiscal year. This next fiscal year, we will only have 1.
And just on a long-term basis, should we expect more and more residents to be doing mail-in voting? And do we have the equipment and procedures in place to handle that?
We do. But it would have to depend on what the state wants us to do.
Yeah.
So and that's the reason why we did all we did.
Yeah.
Because it was done through the state.
Okay, great. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Joe.
I think my colleagues have asked the questions that I had. Eileen, the questions about election integrity have been very newsworthy in the last few months. And I don't take for granted the many challenges associated with running an election. And it is so foundational to the trust in government. And you and your team executed 4 elections this past year under very difficult circumstances and really didn't miss a beat. And we don't take that for granted. It requires great leadership, great organization. Everything that you and your department do is so important to, as I said, the trust between the town, between the government and its citizenry. A lot of it is technical in nature. There are a lot of regulations with COVID. There were a lot of new regulations, and just very grateful for for all the great work that has been done. I think also you've talked in past budget presentations, and I think it's on your webpage about the town clerk is often somebody's first interaction with the town of Hingham, whether it's the sad bride or the happy groom or somebody who needs a dog license or somebody who registers to vote.
Mm-hmm.
And, you are that first impression that is made with so many people, not just people in our community, but you interface with the Attorney General's office, you interface with the Secretary of State's office. And how you represent the town of Hingham has been nothing short of exceptional. And I think what I've heard from a lot of people, you know, they miss that town hall isn't open, and they understand why it can't be open. But they, you know, a lot of it is they miss that human contact. So, you know, we really appreciate you and your team pivoting to make sure that all these essential services are still being conducted. And I think people in the community miss seeing you and everybody in your office. And we look forward to when town hall will be open again, and we can do that again.
I hope it's before I leave.
Me too.
I just want to be able to see people again. It really is horrible. And especially we have to be in the office by ourselves, and it's so quiet in there, and it's so different. It's not what we're used to. My office is the, like you say, an office that they come to first, and they want to have a group of people that I've always had there that have been wonderful to work with.
Yep.
So
I think before opening up to the audience, I just also want to note, and you mentioned that Liz McVarish, an important part of your team, has made the choice to retire, and her last day is Thursday. And we wish Liz we wish her a happy retirement. We also want to thank her for her many, many years of dedicated service to the town.
22 years she's been with me. It's been wonderful. Unbelievable. She's and what a gal.
Yeah, a lot of institutional knowledge between the two of you.
Yes, unfortunately, yes. A lot of life events we lived through also.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of different things. So
is there anyone in the audience who wishes to ask a question or make a comment with respect to either the town clerk or the elections budget? Okay, seeing none. Eileen, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. The next item of business on the board's agenda is a motion to submit Board of Selectmen sponsored warrant articles for the 2021 annual town meeting. This is actually a procedural vote to insert articles into the warrant. It should be noted that each of these warrant articles will then be subject to a public hearing, both by the Board of Selectmen as well as by the advisory committee. So while we will not be discussing the merits of any of these articles this evening, we will be doing that fairly soon. Joe or Bill, do either of you have any questions for Tom with respect to this vote?
No, I've gone through the list and I'm satisfied.
Same here, Mary, no questions.
Okay. Any members of the public have a question about the about this item? Okay, seeing none, I would accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to include the following Board of Selectmen sponsored warrant articles in the 2021 annual town meeting warrant. Hannah Lincoln Whiting Fund, assume liability for DCR on rivers, harbors, etc. Reports of various town committees. Report of the Personnel Board. Salaries of town officers. Budgets. Transfer from the Stabilization Fund. Disbursements of electric light department receipts. Building Department Revolving Fund. Transfer funds to the Reserve Fund. Acceptance of easements. Proposed changes to Article 14 of the General Bylaws, Advisory Committee Bylaw, and Municipal Waterways Improvement and Maintenance Fund.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mary? Aye. Thank you. The next item of business is Inside Town Finances. Michelle, could you put that up on the screen? As mentioned last week, the Board of Selectmen is introducing a weekly series that we're calling Inside Town Finances. And this is each week we will take one topic that relates to municipal finance. We will prepare kind of a one-page overview, which will be available on the town website. And our hope in doing this over the next several weeks is to inform and educate everyone in the community about various municipal finance issues that will inform votes at town meeting. So tonight we're just going to talk about local receipts. And just as background, last week we talked about the town's revenue pie. 75% of our revenue comes from property taxes. And the next kind of biggest 10% comes from state aid and 10% comes from local receipts. And this is revenue that's collected by the town for various services, mostly in the form of fees. And we've heard about some of them tonight. We heard Eileen talking about some of her fees. We heard Randy talking about fees. Just in general, local receipts and some of this revenue is sensitive to overall economic conditions. So when the economy is going strong and there's a lot of building permit activity and people are putting additions on their houses, the town collects more revenue. People buy new cars. In difficult economic times, when maybe people put off that home project or put off that car purchase, local receipts may drop. From a town's perspective, when we typically forecast our local receipts revenue, we look at 5 and 10-year averages because we think that helps us with forecasting. So just very briefly, and Michelle, if you could scroll down a little bit, there are really 6 categories of local receipts. Motor vehicle excise tax is nearly half of our local receipts. And basically, any vehicle that's garaged in Hingham is assessed an annual motor vehicle excise tax. The state sets the rate. I believe it's $25 for every $1,000 in value of a vehicle. So the higher the value of a vehicle, the higher the excise tax. And Jean Montgomery, our treasurer collector, who we saw last week in budgets, her office issues and processes all of the excise bill payments and the bills and the payments. The next biggest category is ambulance revenue. Last week, our fire chief, Steve Murphy, presented the Fire and Emergency Management Services budget. Hingham operates its own ambulance service. And in doing that, we collect about $1.4 million in revenue every year. And the majority of the money that the town collects comes from Medicare and Medicaid and insurance. So if somebody needs to go to the hospital and it gets run through Medicare, instead of Medicare paying a private insurance company, they pay the town of Hingham. And I think it's worth noting that nearly 25% of the fire and emergency management budget is offset by this ambulance revenue. So last week, Steve Murphy presented a budget of $4 million. That didn't include this revenue. The next category is license and permit revenue. So, Eileen talked about some of the marriage licenses, birth certificates, death certificates, business certificates, dog licenses. If you look on the town clerk's page on the website, there's a fee schedule associated with all those. The biggest part of license and permit revenue is actually building permit revenue. So if Bill Ramsey is putting an addition on his house, he gets a building permit and he pays some money based on the value of that project, and that comes in his building permit revenue. When the Station Street project across the street from Bill Ramsey's house is built on the old Settles Glass parcel, they pay a building permit fee. Again, the bigger the project, the higher the revenue. And our building permit revenue, which is, we collect about $1 million in license and permit revenue. And the majority of that is building permits. And again, a lot of that offsets the cost of the building department and some of the land use department budgets that we're going to hear on Thursday night. We also collect revenue from shellfish permits because our harbor master, Ken Corson, is also the shellfish constable. The next category of local receipts is meals tax revenue. Pre-COVID, we were collecting $800,000 a year in meals tax revenue. Back in 2009, the Massachusetts legislature approved a local option that allowed municipalities to levy up to a 3/4% tax on the sale of restaurant meals. So those were both meals consumed in a restaurant or carry-out meals, say from a grocery store. The annual town meeting, Bill and Joe, you may remember this, source of a lot of debate and discussion. I think it passed by about 5 votes to adopt the meals tax revenue. And at that time, town meeting said, we want to use this money that we collect for non-recurring expenses. So we started collecting it in 2010, and by 2015, we had $2 million accumulated. And in 2015, when we went to issue debt for the Hingham Middle School, we actually took $2 million out of the meals tax account and used that to defray the taxpayer share of the middle school. It was tax relief. And since then, every year, we've taken $600,000 of meals tax revenue and used it so that we didn't have to charge people, taxpayers, as much, again, for the middle school, because we're going to pay that project off for about 20 years. The next category of local receipts is payment in lieu of taxes. We have a couple businesses in town that pay, instead of paying a property tax, they make a payment in lieu of taxes. Same amount of money, just captured in a different place. In last year, Hingham received $500,000 in investment income. And I want to start by saying that we are not in the arbitrage business as the town of Hingham. We take all the free cash that we have on hand, which is our unassigned fund balance, and we invest it in low-risk securities. And last year, that generated about $500,000 of investment income. This year, that number is down a lot because interest rates have fallen so much. And then we have about $1.2 million that's made up of penalties and interest, boat excise tax, some charges for services, fines, and departmental revenue, kind of a lot of miscellaneous things. So the bottom line, and Michelle, if you could scroll up, is that about 10% of our revenue comes from local receipts. That's about $10 million in a year. And I would just point out that a lot of the departmental budgets that we've heard over the last week, and we will continue to hear, a lot of the services that these departments provide generate revenue for the town. And in a lot of cases, that revenue is significant. Joe or Bill, I don't know if you have any questions about local receipts.
I do. If you could scroll down a little bit, Michelle, on the screen to the payments in lieu of taxes. This is not an option. People either pay real estate taxes or they can elect payment in lieu of taxes. These are, am I correct that this is taxes on properties that are not otherwise subject to tax? For example, a government property.
This is actually Blue Cross Blue Shield.
So that's
and yeah, so this is actually, I checked with Sue Nickerson, it's Blue Cross Blue Shield. And Joe, I'm not sure why they make a payment in lieu of property taxes.
What about the water company?
The water company actually is, Michelle, if you want to scroll up, the water company pilot and the Hingham Light pilot are in, do you see that 2% other?
I see it.
In the pie chart at the top?
Yeah.
That's where the payment, that's where the water company is, and that's where Hingham Light is.
Got it.
This payment in lieu of taxes comes from Blue Cross Blue Shield, which is a private entity. So for some reason, it's captured in local receipts. But
I'm not sure the history of it either, but Joe, your larger point is actually accurate. It's not an option. It's not something people can a program they can opt into.
Right. Thank you. Great presentation, Mary. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Bill, any questions?
Mary, this is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Michelle, if you could arrange for that to be posted on the town website.
Will do.
That'll be great. And next Tuesday, because I know you're probably the suspense is probably killing you, but next week we're going to talk about excluded debt. So we're going to kind of make our way around that revenue pie, and then we'll turn to expenses. Any member of the public have a question or comment about Inside Town Finances local receipts? Okay, seeing none. Tom, COVID-19 update?
Sure. Thank you, Mary. So I'll go through some general data and then we'll discuss our vaccine rollout plan. And bear with me, in this general data discussion tonight, I wanted to stress some of what we've all been told several times, and that's just because of the explosion of numbers in the country, the state, and even here in Hingham. So I feel that they warrant repeating. So bear with me as I get through this. The Hingham Health Department is urging residents to remain vigilant against the spread of COVID-19 as the community remains at high risk for the disease. According to the public health data from the Mass Department of Public Health released last week, the town's designation remains at red, indicating a high risk of spread in the community. The average daily incidence rate for the town of Hingham is 70.8 per 100,000 residents, up from 58.6 the prior week. According to the DPH, there have been 238 new cases of COVID-19 in the community over the past 14 days. There have been a total of 1,133 cases in Hingham since the start of the pandemic. As of yesterday, confirmed COVID-19 cases in Massachusetts climbed to 451,535. Residents are strongly encouraged to avoid high-risk activities, especially indoor social gatherings, and all Massachusetts residents are under orders from the governor to wear masks at all times while in public. Residents are reminded to always take the following precautions to prevent further spread of COVID-19 in the community. Remember that an infected individual can spread 19 before they have symptoms, which is why social distancing, maintaining a minimum of 6 feet from others, is critical. Those who must go out are urged to avoid gathering in groups. Maintain 6 feet from people outside your household. Do not shake hands or hug. Often wash your hands. Those who are at high risk for COVID-19, including those over the age of 65 with underlying health conditions, are advised to stay home and avoid non-essential tasks and errands. Wear a mask in indoors and outdoor spaces at all times. Face coverings should cover the nose and mouth, fit snugly and comfortably across against the side of the face, be secured with either ties or ear loops, permit breathing without difficulty, and be able to be washed and machine dried without damage. Face masks should be washed regularly depending on the amount of use. I know some of that felt repetitive, but you heard the numbers at the beginning, and I think it was important to restate them. Okay, regarding our vaccine rollout, the vaccine distribution continues across Massachusetts as the state works through its 3-phase vaccine rollout plan. We were pleased to announce last week that the first responders in the town of Hingham received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination. On Tuesday and Thursday, January 12th and 14th, Hingham paramedics administered the Moderna vaccine to members of the Hingham Police Department, Hingham Fire Department, and regional 911 dispatchers during clinics held at the Hingham Senior Center. The Hingham Health Department is one of approximately 115 organizations statewide approved to distribute vaccinations to public safety personnel as part of phase 1 of the state's COVID-19 vaccination distribution plan. The COVID-19 vaccination is not available to the general public at this time. However, our vaccine planning group is applying for state authorization to allow the town to operate a clinical site for additional groups in phase 1 of the state's rollout plan, such as healthcare workers providing non-COVID facing care. We are also following the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency's incident management framework to expand our vaccine planning group and bring in additional trained staff to plan and coordinate larger scale vaccine clinics, should we be authorized by the state to move forward. As more information becomes available, we will continue to share it with the community. Please refer to the state's when can I get the COVID-19 vaccine website for the most up-to-date vaccine information. This page can be found by visiting mass.gov, clicking on the COVID-19 link, and then clicking when can I get the vaccine. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. Tom, I note that Carol Meyer from the Hingham Anchor is on the line. And if we could please make sure that Carol gets a copy of that COVID-19 update.
Sure.
I know I got it separately from my meeting packet, which I know we sent to Carol, but it would be, I think she and the Anchor have been a good partner in helping share this important information. Joe, any questions for Tom about the COVID-19 update?
I don't, Mary. I mean, Tom, thank you. The questions I've heard from residents, you've answered. People are calling saying, when can I get it? And the answer is we're getting our instructions from the state, and they need to go and follow the links. And as that information is updated, the information online will be updated. So thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Bill, any questions for Tom?
No questions. Thank you, Tom.
Anyone in the public have a question with respect to the COVID-19 update? Okay, seeing none. The next item of business on the agenda is a review of an open meeting complaint filed by Patrick Higgins and Associates on January 4th, 2021. I'm going to turn this over to Counsel for the Town, John Coughlin.
Sure. So the board received an open meeting law complaint on January 4th for its December 22nd meeting. Under the law, this board has 14 business days to review the complaint and file its response. So we're within the time frame tonight. The board also has the authority to delegate either a board member or a staff person to file the response. So my recommendation is we would take a vote to authorize the town administrator to file a response, and I'll work with Tom to prepare that and have it submitted within the 14 business days.
Joe or Bill, any questions for John?
No questions for me.
No question, Mayor.
Members of the public, any questions? Okay, I would accept a motion.
I'll move to direct the town administrator to prepare a response to the open meeting law complaint filed by Patrick Higgins and Associates on January 4, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mary? Aye. Next item of business is appointments. We have 3 potential appointments. I think we can each take one. I will lead off. I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Charles Souther as a special police officer for a term ending June 30th, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mary? Aye.
I'll move to appoint Daniel McGonigal to the Development and Industrial Commission to fill an unexpired term ending June 30, 2025.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mary? Aye.
I'd make a motion to appoint Mark LaBelle to the Energy Action Committee to fill an unexpired term ending June 30th, 2022.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mary? Aye. Next on the agenda is the approval of common victualler. I always trip over how to say that. Licenses. You guys do a lot of the reading of the motions as chair. I get to sort of deflect those, but I'll read this one out since it's kind of a doozy.
Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve the following common victualler licenses effective January 1st, 2021 through December 31, 2021. Atlantic Bagel and Coffee, located at 282 Main Street. Be Good LLC, 94 Derby Street, Suite 237. Barnes & Noble, 96 Derby Street, Suite 300. Bloomy Rhine, 21 Main Street. Brood Awakenings, Inc., 19 Main Street. Broad Cove Auctions, 20 Broad Cove Road. Bruegel's Bagel Bakery, 211 Lincoln Street. Capital One Cafe, 92 Derby Street. Cava Mezza Grill LLC, 94 Derby Street, Suite 239. Chill Gelato LLC, DBA Gelato and Chill, 92 Derby Street. Dunkin' Donuts, 179 Lincoln Street. Elite Vending, Avanti Market, 1 Talbot's Drive. Flick at Blue Cross Blue Shield, 25 Technology Drive. Hingham House of Pizza, 74 North Street. Nona's Homemade Inc., 19 Main Street. Panera Bread, 92 Derby Street. Pilgrim Skating Arena, 75 Recreation Park Drive. Red Eye Roasters Coffee Lounge, 3 Otis Street. Smile Zone LLC, DBA Menchie's, Hingham Shipyard, 15 Shipyard Drive. Starbucks Coffee Company, 1 Derby Street. Starbucks Coffee Company, 184 Lincoln Street. White's Pastry Shop, 98 Derby Street. Whiting Street Donuts, 187 Whiting Street. And Whole Foods Market, 94 Derby Street.
I'll second. I'm sorry.
I was going to say second, but you beat me.
I was going to say second, but noting that the address for Flick is 25 Technology Place.
Oh, 25 Technology Place. Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion? All in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mary? Aye. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Seeing none, town administrator reports. Michelle?
I have one tonight. So Tom and I think you know this, Mary, we're happy to report that Governor Baker signed our senior means tested property tax exemption legislation into law last Friday. If you recall, annual town meeting in 2019 authorized the Board of Selectmen to file special legislation to establish a new property tax relief for seniors in town, meeting certain income and asset criteria. The goal of this exemption was to try to alleviate some of a growing tax burden that could force some of our seniors in Hingham on fixed incomes to possibly have to sell their homes. So the legislation also allows for the Board of Selectmen to set the range of the tax credit each year and to fund it by either proportionally shifting the tax levy on residential taxpayers or funding it through an appropriation or transfer from existing funds. So we'll be working with Sue Nickerson, Jean Montgomery, Erin Walsh, Jennifer Young, and others to figure out implementation and the plan possibly for this fall. And of course, coming back to the Board of Selectmen to discuss this.
That's great news, Michelle. I want to thank in particular former Selectman Karen Johnson, who really spearheaded this initiative. I know that Jean Montgomery, Sue Nickerson, Rick Nowland, our assessor, there were many people involved, but in particular, Karen's diligence in making sure this was seen through, I think was instrumental to its passage. We also appreciate the support from Senator O'Connor, Reps Moschino, and Murphy. Anything else, Michelle?
Nope, thank you.
Tom?
Yeah, just very quickly, I just wanted to, Mary, you were so accurate in your effusive praise of the department heads tonight, and especially with Susan Sarney, but across the board with all of our public safety, police and fire, all of the general government staff that we talked to tonight, the library, the DPW, and on and on and on. But it's more than just those folks. It was occurring to me as we were talking that, you look at, and Mary, you pointed it out in Susan's presentation, right, is there was her regular job in there. And then on top of it was a pandemic. The pandemic itself is a plus one job. That's another whole job on top of it. And that's something that they have to do. We all work through, but it's more than more than just the hours. It's the lost family time. It's the weekend work. It's the night work. So it's more than just them. It's their families too. I just wanted to point that out Often we remember that when we think about the sacrifices of our police and firemen. But during the pandemic, our general government staff and others are really feeling that as well. The hours, the commitment that the people that I and Michelle work with every day are offering to the town are just heroic, and often their families pay the price. So just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. And I would acknowledge that there are 3 people on this call: yourself, Michelle, Heidi, Sharon Perfetti, who also I would put right in there with that group. We are so grateful to everyone's dedication, and we know it's not always easy. Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
Bill, anything to report? Selectmen reports?
I have nothing tonight, Mary. Thank you.
Joe?
Since our last meeting, the MBTA had yet another meeting on their ferry dock improvement project. They are really moving forward. Their anticipated construction time is December 2021 through 2023. So I think it's very positive for the town that the MBTA has committed to improving the dock there, the ferry dock, and it's a good sign that ferry service will be returning once the COVID restrictions are less stringent. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. And the only thing I would add is tomorrow night I will be attending the Library Board of Trustees meeting, because as chair, I am a trustee of the library. So I will look forward to hearing more about much of what Linda talked about at that meeting. Our board, we posted a meeting this afternoon for Thursday night. We are going to be meeting twice this week, because on Thursday, our agenda is dedicated solely to budgets. We will be hearing, I think, all but one budget, which will allow our colleagues on the advisory committee to continue their important work. So we will be meeting on Thursday at 7 o'clock to review more budgets. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn this evening.
1 second. Was the time 6:30 or 7 for Thursday?
So, I thought it was 7. Was it posted for 7?
I'm looking. Hold on.
Okay.
Thanks. I'm just calling it up.
Yeah.
$7 o'clock.
Oh, it is. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yep. No, just based on the agenda, it didn't seem like we needed to meet at 6:30.
Mary won the race.
So I will second the motion.
I had a faster connection in my
That's
basement.
right.
Go figure.
Go figure.
I heard a second. All those in favor, Joe?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Mary, aye. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, all.